Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Off With Their Heads from Jude City Games. Off With Their Heads is a two-player trick-taking game set in the world of Wonderland's War. Before we dive into the game, this channel is sponsored by Allplay, more about them at the end of the video. In Off With Their Heads, players are going to be playing tricks. You're going to be playing tricks across 3 rounds, with 9 cards in each round, playing 7 of those cards, and then holding 2 of them in order to build a perfect poker hand at the end of the game. The way it's going to play out is on your turn, you're going to look at your hand, and you're going to select a card to play. Now right now, we know that the current lead suit is hearts. That's going to be changing every single trick as it goes around this circle over here. So right now, maybe we want to win the trick, maybe we don't. That's where we have to pay attention to this roll and write, because this is a trick and write, by the way, a trick and write game in which you're going to be marking off on this sheet depending on how your trick resolved. Effectively, if you are the winner of the trick, if you have the best card in the trick, you're going to be placing a mark into the top section in this meadow. If you have the lowest card in the trick, you're going to be placing a mark into the keep, and if you're in the middle, you're going to be placing a mark into the woods. The way that's going to resolve is you're going to go ahead and resolve. Let's pretend maybe I'm trying to work my way towards the woods because I want to make the keep. I'll work my way towards the keep, so I'm going to play a 3 of spades. Meanwhile, the other players play their cards, and we have a 6 of diamonds, we have a 9 of clubs, and we have an 8 of clubs. You're going to start with the current lead suit, which is hearts. There are no hearts, so that means no one currently has a hearts. The next lead card is going to be clubs. The highest club is this 9 of clubs over here. The 9 of clubs is going to be the high mark. This player is going to mark in the meadow on their own sheet. Every player is going to have their own sheet from this giant pad over here, so they're going to mark a mark into the meadow on their sheet. Then the 8 over here is a mid card, so is the 6 of diamonds. Those 2 players are going to mark in the woods, and I'm going to be able to mark this 3 of spades into this bottom sheet over here. Basically, depending on whether you are high, middle, or low, that's going to determine where you can mark your suit. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to mark a 3 over here on this sheet in the bottom section. Now specifically, each section has different rules as far as what it's doing, which I'll walk you through shortly. But you are trying to ultimately find a cohesive strategy as to where to place your marks, and then you're trying to play tricks that meet your strategy so you can place where you're trying to place with the right colors and numbers. That's where I'm going to take a break over here and talk through how these sections score, and then I'll come back to the trick-taking element of the game. So, in the meadow, up top over here, what you're trying to do is you're trying to complete mushrooms. Completed mushrooms are going to be worth points, for example, 27, 15, 3, 15, and 27. You are going to be marking in each mushroom from left to right, but you could do each individual mushroom on its own, and you have to mark each mushroom with different numbers. For example, if I did put a 3 of spades over here, or a 3 black, once you're putting it on your sheet, the only thing that matters is the color and the number, not the specific suit. But if I marked a 3 black over here, in this particular mushroom, I couldn't mark a 3 again, it would have to be a different number. Black marks will go in either of these 3 mushrooms, and red marks will go into either of these 3 mushrooms. That central mushroom is by color. It works with either of the colors. Additionally, as you fill various boxes, you're going to get various rewards. In addition to the points for filling a mushroom, you have these Eat Me spots over here. Eat Me spots are very powerful. They allow you to make a mark in a different section with the same number. For example, if I mark a 10 over here, a 10 red, I can go ahead and put a 10 red down here on this bottom sheet in order to mark that out. Meanwhile, these teacups, once you go ahead and mark the teacup, I'm going to place a 3, then a 5, then a 7. You do not have to go in ascending order. Once you mark that teacup, you're going to mark off a teacup. These are modifiers that help you adjust your numbers, so I've earned a teacup that I can spend later. That's the top section over here. You are basically trying to complete mushrooms to get the points in the mushrooms plus the benefits. In the middle section, you're trying to surround these little point marks over here. You see individual point marks surrounded by trees. Once you have surrounded a tree completely, let's put a 7, a 9, a 10, a 1, and a 4. Once you've completely surrounded a mark, you're going to get that points in the center. That's 10, by the way. It's actually not adjacent. You only need these 4. So you're going to get the points in the center. Additionally, you're going to get 30 bonus points if you completely fill the woods. If you really commit to the woods, you'll get 30 bonus points. And additionally, if at no point you have the same number in an adjacent tree, for example, a 7 next to a 7, if the entire woods respects what's called the Jabberwock's rule, then you're going to double the points from those stars in the woods. So you can get a whole 102 points, 130, 70, 36, 72, 102. You can get 102 points from the woods if you play it perfectly. And then at the bottom, in the keep, you are working your way from the left and the right. On the left side, you're making red numbers. On the right side, you're marking black numbers. But you're trying to time the numbers that you place. Because at first, this 3 over here doesn't really matter. It's just about making progress. But when I get to the next spots, these 2 spots, they have a little laurel wreath around them telling me that I'm going to get points for the numbers I put there. So for example, this 3 is going to be worth 0 points, whether it's a 3 or a 10. But if I can get a 10 in this box, that's going to be worth 10 points, so you do want to try to time your high numbers in specific boxes. As you work your way, you're going to get bonuses. In the center, you get an extra bonus where you can mark any number into the other 2 sections, and that's going to be how you score the keep. Additionally, you want to collect the Wonderlandians. The Wonderlandians are going to be up to 7 different characters that you can earn in different ways. Up here in the meadow, once you have 3 different mushrooms marked, you earn one of them. Once you have completed a single mushroom, you earn another one. Over here on the teacups, if you've earned your 4th teacup, then you earn the Mad Hatter over here. In the woods, you're going to earn for surrounding this section, as well as for having these multicolor mushrooms, all 4 of them marked. That will get you 2 of those there. In the keep, you're going to score for these 2, meaning you have to go ahead and branch off your pathway in order to collect them, and you're going to get points at the end of the game, up to 64 points for collecting all 7 Wonderlandians. That's basically going to be the ways you score: the meadow, the woods, the keep, and the Wonderlandians called the Tea Party. Lastly, you're going to score for your poker hand. In your hand of cards, which you have over here, every round you're going to be saving 2 cards. For example, maybe I save this 10 and the Jack, trying to work my way towards a straight. You'll be collecting 6 cards in total, 2 in each of the 3 rounds, and at the end you're going to assemble your 5 best cards into a poker hand, and you're going to get additional points for having a better poker hand, as well as 5 extra points for having the best poker hand on top of it all. So investing in a good poker hand can sometimes be worth trading off playing those cards to get what you want in the game. Speaking of which, the general sequence of play is you have 9 cards, you're going to be playing 7 tricks. Each trick you're going to advance the queen, changing the suit as you go, and then you're going to be resetting, shuffling the cards back in across those rounds in order to go ahead and complete the game. That is how you play Off With Their Heads from Druid City Games, which means it's time for my review of what I like, don't like, can see others not liking, all of that, starting off with what I like. In general, this is a trick-taking game where it's not necessarily about winning the trick with the highest card. Sure, you're playing a card every round. Sure, there is technically a winner, so to speak, a highest value, but this game is not about that. This game is about trying to figure out what your strategy is and working your way towards your strategy. So I like trick-takers that aren't purely about, did I have the best hand? I like trick-takers that reward you for more clever play, and this game certainly does that. Because it's not about winning, it's about trying to ensure that you either hit the high, the low, or the middle, depending on your goals. And this is additionally elevates the strategy when you pay attention to what other players are doing on their sheets. You can kind of try to look at things and see, okay, well, if you're going high and you're trying to fill your woods, then I can safely play that 10 black and get 10 points over here. Because the downside is if you're trying to fill your keep and I'm trying to fill my keep, we're both going to be trying to play high numbers, and one of us is going to get stiffed over there. One of us is not going to be able to place the number where we want because we didn't account for it. By the way, I should mention, teacups allow you to place a number of a different color or allow you to place it in a different zone. So that's one of those ways you can get out of a bad hand when it didn't work in your favor, but you have to earn those teacups to do so. So the game gives you a lot of things to do as far as the strategy of not just having the best hand, but playing to your hand, playing to your strategy, playing based on the other players, adapting your strategy based on what the other players are doing. Even small things like noticing that your next spot on the bottom keep over there is a point scoring area, that will help me determine what I should be trying to go for or not, or what you are likely to be playing. Small details do matter in this game. I also like the fact that the value of your hand is constantly changing. The fact that the queen is constantly rotating, it means that there isn't really such a thing as a good hand or a bad hand. It's really about you have a hand and you need to time the sequence of play so you can play towards your strategy as the queen moves and as the relative value of each of the cards in your hand changes. The concept of a trick-taking game where it's not purely about winning, I've seen that done in dozens of ways. I like it, but I've seen it done in dozens of ways. I haven't seen quite as much the fact that your hand's value is constantly evolving as you play, and so you could kind of look at a strategy and develop it being like, I can make this hand go mostly low this turn. I can make the same exact hand go mostly high. You really have to plan out the sequence of cards as well as the cards you are setting aside for your poker hand in order to make the hand that you have work for the strategy that you're developing while paying attention to the other players along the way. So that gives, all in all, it gives you enough mitigation. That combined with the teacups means you really have a lot of control in your hand as you play through the game. I'll also say that it's very satisfying to play those high-scoring strategies. Trying to get all 7 guests and getting 64 points from that is amazing. Getting a bunch of these high-value mushrooms is a lot of fun. Completely filling the woods, which I've managed to do 1 time. A ton of fun. Completely filling the keep, which I've managed to do 1 time so far. I've tried doing it multiple times. I've only done each of those 1 time, though. I've never done all 5 mushrooms, by the way. Actually, I don't even know if I've tried doing all 5 mushrooms. But you can get a lot of the high-value strategies, and when you achieve those, that game that you get all 7 guests feels very cool. You may or may not win. It depends on how well other players did and how much you sacrificed to get them. But there are a bunch of high point value strategies, and working your way towards them and achieving them is very satisfying. As far as things I don't like in the game, first of all, this is a 2 to 4 player game. I think it's really best at 3 to 4. When you have fewer players, you're basically playing a ghost card, so to speak, into the middle players are reacting to. I think that works fine as a 3 player game. Once you move to 2, I'd play this as a 3 or 4, just worth noting there. I'll also say that this is a great game, but, there's a big but here, and this is my biggest complaint, I don't find it's as chaining as I might like, which tends to result in me trying to pursue a few of the main strategies and going in that direction. This is a game where I think, in my opinion, from my plays so far, you really have to try to find those high value strategies, seek those out, and then you get a few other points from other areas. I don't think it's a game where you get as well of a score if you are just doing a lot of things. You really need to find your strategy and pursue it, and to me that does mean that after a few plays, I've kind of tried those strategies. It's not a game where you get like 50% of your points from one strategy and the other 50% from a bunch of other things. It really feels like there's a few main ways to play this, and after a few plays, I've seen those main ways, and while it still is enjoyable, that charm has worn off the more I've played it, and the more it feels like, okay, great, I've done this now, and I guess I'll try the wood strategy again. I guess I'll go for a bunch of mushrooms. I guess I'll go for the guess. I'll try for a great poker hand. It does kind of wear off a little bit because of the fact that this game is a little bit more linear and a little bit less spreading. Like, there's interchaining aspects, like the tea party in specific, but there's not a lot of those elements. And lastly, the poker hand specifically, that feels like a luck of the draw situation. When you are working your way towards a poker hand, you have one of two options. You either go for something safe and reliable, like a full house. You can almost always get a full house if you plan for it from the beginning. Or you can try to go for broke and work your way towards a 4 of a kind or a straight flush, and those are fun when you achieve them, but they really do feel like they're luck-based. I can go for a 4 of a kind and never end up drawing that 4th 7. That just will happen in the game. So realistically, your best bet is to go for a full house and hope you can draw into a 4 of a kind, because if you go for a straight, it's only an extra 5 points. It's only an extra 3 points, although you could get the extra 5 points from the highest hand, but it's not a ton of point difference to risk whether that will play out in your favor. And when it does play out in your favor, it feels like you got lucky. The poker hand is the one area where it feels like there's a lot of luck in the game, even as you can strategize around it, relative to the other elements of the game that feel a lot more synergistic with how things can play out, or a lot more in control, I should say, not synergistic, in control. As far as what I can see others not liking, you play the table, but you don't always get what you want. And what I mean by that specifically is that your hand's value does evolve, so that element of control is at your disposal, but your hand's colors don't. And I have found a few games where I might be trying to fill out the keep over here and I need a lot of red cards, and I just don't draw into red. And sure, you can use teacups, but you only have a handful of those. Sometimes you do get a little bit stuck with the color palette of your cards and whether that will filter into your strategy or not. That's the one area where I found that there's a lot of control, but getting stuck with too many of a color if you don't need that color, that's a little tricky. I'll also say that you can find this a little disorienting. As much as I like the rotating suits and how that makes your hand's value change and therefore gives you a lot of control, I have found that players sometimes have a harder time tracking that. They're like, okay, well, this was a high card. Okay, wait, no, now we're up to clubs, okay? It can be a little disorienting because the suit value is constantly changing and you need to adapt to that. Again, for me, it's a pro. For some players, it might be a con. And then lastly, the wood strategy, more so than other strategies in this game, really does feel like all or nothing. If you try to go for completing the woods, which is 102 points for a single thing, 80% of your cards, 80% of your time has to go towards completing the woods if you do so. You can absolutely win on that strategy, but relative to other strategies, it's so dominating that, first of all, if you go for it and don't make it, that's incredibly frustrating, and also it can be a little bit too much on that one area. But if you don't do it, another player might do it and win. It's the one area where I kind of enjoy it. I think, again, I've done it once and it was really fun. I've tried doing it another time. It didn't work out. But like, that is kind of a very all or nothing situation that might be frustrating, whether you go for it or whether another player wins with it. As far as final thoughts on Off With Their Heads, I overall enjoyed this game, but I will say my first few plays of this game were definitely higher, because for me, the main fun of this game was the sense of discovery. I like what this game is doing. I like the game, I enjoy the system, I enjoy the card play, I enjoy the rotating strategy of your hand. This is a fun experience that I've had a lot of fun with. But I also feel that my biggest complaint, all my other complaints are kind of details, my biggest complaint for it is the fact that, for me, the charm of it has gotten less as I've kind of explored the engine. This isn't one of those games where I keep wanting to go back in and irk my way, irk's the wrong word, work my way towards a slightly better score. This is a game where I've tried different strategies, I've gotten high scores with a bunch of strategies, I've won some games, I've lost others, but at this point diving into it again feels like pursuing the exact same sequence or strategy that I've done in other games, and that has taken a little bit out of it for me. For me, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. I still enjoy it, I still like it. I will say if I was rating this after game 1 or 2 or even game 3, I probably would have given it a 4 to 5, but at this point I've kind of explored it, and that it's a game that I highly recommend you try out. I highly recommend you check, especially if you like trick-taking games or if you like the world, the art, any of that. Definitely try this one out. Whether or not it's a keeper, I think that depends heavily on how much you enjoy finding new things versus just iterating on the things you've already done. So for me, it's going to be a 3.5 out of 5. As far as game recommendations, if you want another trick-taking game that has that high, low, mid strategy, Tidal Blade's Banner Festival from the same from Juice City Games had the same kind of element. I personally prefer Off With Their Heads, but both of them have that same trick-taking element. And then additionally, if you just like the world of Wonderland's War over here, check out Wonderland's War, an area control bag building game from Juice City Games as well. And then I mentioned that Allplay is a channel sponsor. If you go to allplay.com, you can find games both from Allplay as well as from a variety of partner publishers they work with. And if you're in the US, it's all for $4 flat rate shipping. If you like trick-taking games that give you an interesting incentive as to whether to win or whether to possibly do other things instead, Torchlit is a newer trick-taking game from Allplay that has you advancing in a dungeon and really trying to time out not just how to win, but to time it where the most loot is in order so that you can walk home with all the treasure. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.